As Dawn held up her outlandishly oversized assets to me, I felt my cheeks burn mightily, and they continued to do so even as Liliana made her way over to the bunny girl and took off her coat. We have more important things to do than tease Takashi. That said, Liliana began wrapping her coat around Dawn's chest like it was an oversized bra. Whatever her motives, Zara has made it clear that we don't have long before the Underworlders attack. We need to be ready for the worst. And that means we don't have any time for your flirting. Zahn, I'm sending word to the rest of the guards, letting them know that Zara's warning. Get them ready for the fight. Whatever happens, we will not surrender to the darkness without a fight. Of course. It was a noble sentiment, one that I had heard many times in many different games. But as Liliana aided Dawn in waddling off in a top-heavy manner, I couldn't help but think about what Zara said, that our defeat was inevitable. And I have to admit, I would have felt better if I could have been certain that she was wrong about that. But she probably wasn't. Oh no. Far too soon, it seemed. Night fell upon Kahe village, and so did an oppressive mood of gloom. As I stood by with the guards, armed with my pitiful sword and shield, I noticed the fear and anxiety they premeditated the people here. Everybody was clearly expecting the worst in the fight to come. And though she did her best to be encouraging in her speech to her people, I have to admit that Liliana's words betrayed her own fears. We all know what's coming. From what we've heard, the Underworlders and their Darkling army are marching towards this very village even as we speak. We don't know how precisely long we have or how many are coming towards us, but we do know that if we lose this fight, it will be the end for us. Our minds, our hearts, everything that makes us what we are will be gone, and the Underworlders will likely have won. There was a loud gulping at this, and I have to admit I wasn't entirely sure that it wasn't me that made the noise. I know that you all feel sorry for the Darklings, and that you all want to try to save them, try to restore them to the people they once were, to the friends and neighbors we knew and cherished in the past. But the sad fact is that we cannot save them unless we are able to save ourselves. So I'm afraid that we must do whatever it takes to survive this onslaught. So please, do not hold back for their sakes, because if any of us are to remain in the light, we must think of our own lives first and foremost, and hope that we may be forgiven for whatever we have to do this night. I knew what Liliana had said without actually speaking the words, so did everyone else there. And as her face fell in shame, as the people around me muffled nervously and somberly, it really hit me as never before, that we, each and every one of us, was in a fight for our very lives, and if we lost, we would die, either in body or mind. And I have to admit, I was once again wondering what in blazes would take my father so long to figure out what was wrong and pull me out of this mess. Only to chide myself for wanting to run and leave these people to face their doom. As another section of my mind was wondering what one guy like me could contribute to this monstrous conflict, Liliana focused her gaze on me. Takashi, you are a guest of this village, and can't hear me like the others can. And though I appreciate your offer to fight alongside us, I do feel that it would be best if you were to remain close to someone who could keep an eye out for you, relay any information or orders that I have. Asahi, would you mind keeping an eye on him? Of course not. I wish I could give you greater reassurances. Wish I could promise you that we will win this fight. But I can't. All I could do is vow that we will fight, and that we will keep fighting as long as we can, and maybe, just maybe, the Underworlders will finally learn to respect the light. Report to your posts, and the best of luck to you all. With that, everybody started moving, going about whatever orders they were given. As for me, Asi gently wrapped her hand around my wrist and started leading me to the outer wall of the village. All too soon, we were perched at the top, looking out over the darkened forest that surrounded the village, knowing full well that soon enough, doom and destruction would make its march towards us. So, I guess this is it, huh? The final battle, already.
Looks that way. Look, perhaps your father may still find you and take you away from here.
Thanks, but anyway, I don't feel like I'd feel right about just, leaving like that. Not when you and everyone else here is facing something like this.
You're a good person, Taki. I wish I had more time to get to know you better. So do I.
Aussie and I jumped and at the unexpected sound of Dawn's voice. As the two of us whipped about, we saw the bunny girl standing nearby with a cutesy poo expression on her face.
Dawn, what are you doing here?
Waiting for the Underworlders to come after us, same as you. But that doesn't mean I intend to spend that time being all doom and gloom, if you get my meaning.
Dawn was certainly skilled at killing moments, that was certain, and she seemed determined to make sure that the mood was good and dead as she came closer and glommed me from behind. Look, this is enhancing the mood, alright?
Oh, you do feel nice, Taki. Wish I had time to take you for a ride.
My god, woman. Back home, I might have spoken up in protest, but right now, in the face of utter annihilation, all I could do was groan. Feel my cheeks burn as Aussie groaned in dismay and watched and wait for the end time to come. Also, and this is something I knew that I could never say to Aussie, but I had to admit to myself, Dawn felt pretty good as well. One of the nice things about video games and movies is they generally don't take place in real time. There are cutscenes, dissolves, and tools for moving from one scene to another, so you don't spend long, boring hours watching the characters wait for imminent doom and butt-kicking they are soon to receive. But if this was a video game, then I was on the wrong side of the screen, which meant that I and everyone else was forced to endure a long, grueling wait as we all peered into the darkness, watching and waiting, and wondering when the end would come, leaving us all to exchange idle chatter, glance about, and make fearful jokes. And in my case, have Dawn and Aussie huddled close to me in order to stave off a slight chill. Okay, so maybe it wasn't all that bad. But still, I wouldn't have blamed anybody for wanting the waiting to be over so we could just get this nightmare over with, one way or another. Me, I didn't feel that way, because I had seen the end that waited for us if we failed, and I was more than happy to put that off for as long as possible. Even waiting was a lot better than what I had seen the Underworlders do. Who's that? I think I hear something. Which is why I really wish I hadn't heard that. But I had, and so did everyone else. In an instant, myself and everyone else stationed atop the wall were on full alert, eyes peeled and weapons at the ready. I didn't see anything, and at first I didn't hear anything either. Not unless you counted the worried voices and rustling about as the people around me readied their weapons. But then I heard something. Oh! A cruel chuckle born of anticipation. One that caused me to flash back to the village I had seen being overwhelmed by the conceivable evil. Evil! And it was a chuckle that was soon followed by another, and was echoed by more cruel sounds, and then... Over there! Leaping to her feet, Aussie took aim with her crossbow and loosed an arrow into the night. I couldn't see a thing, but I could tell her aim was true when I heard a voice crying out in pain.
Somebody, shine a light over that way!
I couldn't make sense of much of what was happening, but I did notice when several light stones swung their illuminating rays out in the direction Aussie had fired. Oh dear. And I certainly noticed the light fell upon beings who were even darker than the pitch-black night that enveloped the land, and the screams of hatred and outrage as darklings glared at us with eyes of red. Everybody, open fire! I didn't recognize the voice that gave the order, but I could be certain that nobody hesitated in heeding it, Aussie least of all. An instant later, a hailstorm of arrows launched from Kahe village to rain down upon the legion of darklings that were even now launching fireballs back at us. And then my ears were filled with screams of pain from both sides. Off to the side, a guard fell to his ground, his chest scorched with a fireball. Among the darklings, several men and women fell to the ground, arrows lodged in their bodies. I couldn't tell if they survived or not, but I could tell that none of their fellows even cared. They just kept advancing upon the village, launching fireballs and marching over their fallen. All the while several on our side were struck, even as the rest continued to launch arrows. As for me, I find myself glad that I wasn't wielding a bow of any kind. I don't think I could have handled being in that position, of facing all the people as I stole everything they were and everything they could ever be. And as the carnage continued, I couldn't help but think of all the times I had been in a shooting game, mowing down whomever was in my way without a care for who I wound up shooting. I was shooting bad guys after all, And if the odd civilian got in the way, well, the worst that happened was that I had to replay that section. But as the stench of blood and burning flesh filled the air, reality struck me of the nightmare that surrounded me now. As the fighting continued, leaving me surrounded with screams of pain and blood spilling forth, I wanted nothing more than to find the nearest bed and crawl right under it. But I was too afraid to move. Too afraid to do anything but huddle next to where Ozzy and Dawn were, wondering when it would all end. We're using up our arrows too fast. Any ideas?
I've got one. Thanks to Zara, I've got plenty of energy for some big-time powers. And I do mean big time, so pucker up.
What? I had just enough time to wonder what in blazes Dawn had in mind before Ozzy whirled about in surprise. And that was just in time for Dawn to grab her and plant a deep, passionate kiss upon her lips, one that lasted a long time and even seemed to have the two girls glowing. I was wondering why they were glowing. When Dawn finally broke the kiss, Ozzy just looked confused as the bunny girl took a few steps back. Dawn? Nothing's happening.
Oh, it will. But, you might want to give us all some room.
Give you what? Oh. At that moment, Ozzy's breast bounced mightily before swelling to twice their size, right before Ozzy herself started to swell up. What is happening right now? As I and everyone else looked on in surprise, the blonde archer grew to twice her normal height, crying out in surprised dismay as she came to the tower over all of us.
Jump! Get off the wall and go after the Darklings!
But Ozzy was too surprised and confused to listen to Dawn's advice. All she was able to do was step back away from us, let us be crushed. Unfortunately, the only thing beneath her foot was empty air, leaving her to windmill her arms helplessly before falling off the wall and crashing down to the ground below. The good news was that, at Ozzy's ever-increasing height, the fall hadn't been that far. The bad news was that she was presently stunned, and I had just been given a perfect view up her dress, and now had a fresh nosebleed from it. Should I make her voice deeper now? Yeah, I should. Ouch!
Asahi, hurry up and start fighting! This isn't gonna last forever, you know.
Huh? Oh, right. She's gonna throw a fucking tree? Without another word, Ozzy recovered and forced herself back to her feet, wincing in pain as a series of fireballs found a much larger target. The blonde archer let go a series of tears as she marched towards the Darkling Legion, her features twisted with a greater pain. She was now huge enough to deal a crushing blow to the forces that were now marching on Kahe Village, the same forces that had been turned against them by the will of the Underworlders, all of them victims themselves. So Ozzy paused just long enough to glance towards us, at the people that were wounded and were also fighting to survive, and letting out a few more tears, she turned her gaze back towards the Darklings and growled deep in her throat, right before bringing up her right foot and then smashing it down upon a horde of Darklings. Underworld monsters! Where are you hiding? Ozzy marched further into the fray, grabbing a nearby tree that seemed huge to me but looked tiny in her grasp. Clutching it by the base, she then turned toward the Darklings and used it like a massive broom, sending dozens of Darklings flying painfully through the air. Why didn't Dawn turn me into a giant? That would make me helpful. Like, she's an archer. She's not meant for, like, strength combat. Send me in. I can't do anything with a sword and shield, but come on. Even more, the Darklings loosed a wave of fireballs at the tree, only to regret it when it was burning wood that was smashed down upon them. You trick us. You manipulate us. You make us fight amongst ourselves. Where are you? You're the only ones I want to kill, not these people. So where are you? As Ozzy wept miserably and continued to fight, I realized that she had raised a valid question. Thus far, there had been absolutely no sign of the Underworlders anywhere, but they had to be somewhere around. As I understood it, this was a big fight for everything, and after watching them delight in all the suffering they caused, I couldn't imagine them not wanting to be present for this presumably inevitable victory. So where? Look out! I practically jumped out of my skin at this, and so did several others nearby. Whirling away from the continued fight between the giant Aussie and the Darkling Legions, we looked towards the interior of the village. What? And to our horror, we saw a pit in the middle of form which hordes of darklings spewed forth, lobbing fireballs in every direction.
What the? They can't do that! Can they do that?
Gaming number one. Always keep a trick up your sleeve for the grand finale. Obviously, the Underworlders had kept a few tricks of theirs hidden from the Overworlders, and now the tactic was paying off. For as focused as everybody had been on the assault taking place outside, they had been taken completely by surprise by the sudden appearance of enemy within their own village. As I looked on, the Darklings repeated their rampage of wanton cruelty upon the innocents within the village walls. And it wasn't just Darklings we were dealing with. Even as the guards turned their arrows towards the legions, billowing up from the center of the village, 3 familiar figures slogged their way up the passage of ooze and emerged covered in dripping slime.
Ugh. How did I let you two talk me into letting Gwenor get us in here? You know how I feel about our ectoport. I'm sorry. I'm not a fan of them either, but it was the fastest way for us to get in. We win this battle. We win it all. So let's grab the village head and turn everybody to darkness.
My heart falling into the pit of my stomach as I thought of the people here being turned as the other villagers had been. I felt a surge of desperation. Whirling about, I looked at the giant Aussie who was still fighting with everything she had. Aussie! The Underworlders! They're inside the village! They're...
Oh, no you don't.
I glanced back in time to see Adriana firing an arrow into the air. I didn't track the arrow, so I was spared to the sight of a flash bomb exploding, immediately blinding everyone unfortunate enough to be looking its way. And thanks to me and my big mouth, that included Asahi.
Nobody likes a tattletale. Enjoy your precious light, Overworlders, while you can.
The situation was really bad. Most of the guards of Kahe Village had been at least partially blinded by that flash arrow, and now had the Darklings coming after them without restraint. And as I looked back towards Aussie, the situation got even worse as she started to slowly shrink back down while surrounded by even more Darklings.
It's wearing off! Taki, we can't let them get to Liliana!
I know, but what can we... Hey!
I still have enough power!
Did she do it on me? Before I could ask what Dawn had in mind, she wrapped her arms around my frame and planted her lips squarely upon mine. Once again, I felt delirious warmth wash through me, sweeping aside my fears and concerns, if only for a time. There were a few things about Dawn's personality that I didn't care for, but I had to admit her kisses were becoming a high point of me being in this crazy world. So much so that it was all too soon when she broke the kiss and pulled away. Okay, so, is this the part where I turn into a king size and go on a stomping spree?
No, but I did just give you a strength boost. It won't last long, but hopefully it'll last long enough to clear out the intruders and the Underworlders themselves.
Let's fucking go! I briefly wondered if this strength boost would mean that I could kiss my clothes goodbye, but before I could give any additional thought to the matter, a fearsome cry prompted me to whirl about just in time to see a Darkling coming at me, flame clenched in hand. Prompted by sheer instinct and all the tension that had been building up inside me thus far, I lashed out at the darkness-turned villager and tried to swat her away. Get the fuck out of my way. I didn't just try, I succeeded. The stricken Darkling cried out in pain and was sent flying through the air and over the wall before falling from sight.
Come on, we don't have time to waste!
Thinking of the way Aussie's growth had started to reverse, I realized that Dawn was right and followed her as she scampered down the stairs. As I ran, I drew forth the pitiful sword and shield that I had been given, figuring that they would be better than nothing as further Darklings came at us. Looking about, I saw the underworld trio and a horde of Darklings heading towards where Liliana and a group of guards that included Zahn were. Having seen what would happen if they turned Liliana, I charged the nearest Darkling and ramming her with my shield, even as they threw a barrage of fireballs at me. Oh. Like the previous Darkling, this one was sent flying through the air in the instant I slammed into her. But I didn't have time to celebrate as another Darkling came at me, and then another. Oh, Dawn, no! As for Dawn, she also had her hands full as a wave of Darklings came at her as well. But even as they reared back, hands laden with fire, the bunny girl brought one of her hands to her lips and blew a kiss. A kiss made up of a cloud of glowing pink hearts that surged towards them? And as they collided with the darklings en masse, the hearts left them dazed and stunned, quickly sinking to the ground with almost happy expressions. Oh God.